Chapter 7, Credit Cards and Consumer Loans. You can't borrow your way to financial success. Using any kind of credit requires a lot of thinking, planning, so forth. You know, some folks are risk takers, and they get lucky by investing in things and so forth. But if you're using the type of instruments that we're talking about, they're typically very expensive to borrow, and it's really difficult to overcome the interest charges. You need to consider the reason you're borrowing and make sure it's sound. Figure out how you'll repay the debt. We talked about before, just because somebody is willing to loan you debt doesn't mean that you're in a position to be able to pay it off. You have to figure that out on your own. And how the fees and interest are calculated. This is important. We'll see some examples later in the chapter where these charges are you don't get credit for paying down interest. There's another example where you basically pay all your interest up front. So you just really have to think about what you're doing when you're handling debt, and especially when you're talking about credit card and installment debt, because there are a lot of companies in this business that are their business model is to get you hooked and get their hooks into you, so that they you're effectively tied to them. So the next 5 years, pay all of your credit card balances in full each month, certainly no longer than 2 or 3 months later. Move all your credit card balances you do carry to lower interest accounts. Don't ever make convenience charges on the accounts which you carry a balance. Don't pay for gas on those accounts. Don't pay for groceries on those accounts. If you're buying some sort of asset, something that you're going to own for a long time, then it's okay to use those accounts, but choose wisely. Use only credit cards with a chip and a PIN. Most cards today have chips, but not all of them. This is a much more secure method of protecting your card than just your typical magnetic strip card. 4, use your student loan for direct education expenses only, rather than to maintain your lifestyle. Choose installment loans based on the lowest annual percentage rate, or APR, rather than monthly payment or years to repay. Anytime you go into a lender, you never want to tell them what you can afford. It doesn't matter whether it's your mortgage lender, somebody you're getting a car loan from. Anytime you do this, you're setting yourself up for trouble. Learning objective 1, compare the common types of consumer credit, including credit cards, installment loans. Okay. We talked about APR a minute ago, our annual percentage rate. It's the cost of credit on a yearly basis, stated as a percentage rate. Finance charge is the dollar cost of credit. So your finance charge, if you owe $1,000 and you're paying 12% interest on that, then your monthly charge would be 1/12 of the interest, so it'd be 1,000 times 0.12 divided by 12. So it would be $10 a month. So that would be the finance charge. The types of consumer credit: installment credit. So installment credit is typically fixed rate, and you make a fixed payment on installment credit. Pretty much all other types of credit fall under non-installment credit, this includes open-ended credit. So Open-ended or revolving credit, you can, you borrow up to your credit limit. Typically you use a card or a credit card to do so. Some of them allow you to write checks and so forth. So, credit cards, effective, just another form of installment credit. You make purchases. You can also get cash advances or do balance transfers. Cash advances and balance transfers are very expensive. Be careful with these free transfer offers. A lot of times the transfer fees are very expensive. Just have to be very aware when you're using these instruments. Personal line of credit. Personal line of credit works very much like a credit card. It's an open-ended account. Typically for a personal line of credit, you would write checks and draw. When you write checks on that account, you draw down on the line of credit, and there would be a limit on that credit. So if you had a $5,000 personal line of credit, you'd be able to make purchases from that account, and you would only pay interest on the total purchases that you've made from that account. Home equity line of credit. The rules have changed for these with regard to the new tax law, but in some instances you can tie a line of credit to your home equity and deduct those expenses from the interest expense from your taxes. Service credit. Service credit is credit provided by somebody that you purchase goods from. It's less common today than it was many years ago, but historically retailers gave you 30 days to pay for your purchases without a charge, or they might even give you a discount if you paid for that. That's examples of service credit. Concept check 7.1, distinguish between installment credit and open-ended credit. Installment credit usually has a fixed payment based on a fixed rate over a fixed period of time. Open-ended credit only requires that you make a minimum payment and allows for increases in your debt as long as you are below your credit limit. Concept check 7.1, the second one here, basic features of revolving credit. You can repeatedly borrow as long as you're under your credit limit. Credit cards, personal lines of credit, home equity lines of credit are all examples of revolving credit.